So, you all really like my Mario boss, eh? You can't just say perchance!
Perchance.
Welcome in, my friends. It is I, Devon, for my 1500 subscriber special, as well as the video game 50,000 views, what the heck. I decided I wanted to make a video that both talks about and celebrates my most popular boss. But the question was, what did I want to talk about? After pondering for a few months, I decided I want to pull the curtain and talk about the story behind the Super Mario Bros. 3 Mario boss. I made this fight for the ROM hack, Perchance, by Papanug. I'll even show you how the boss was during its beta. Hopefully that sounds interesting. Let's begin. Let's take a step back before I started coding the boss. I started my battle designing journey with Nubia Sprite, also known as Noob Boss, and made the Sniffit Twin fight back in 2019. I was also working on foreground/background bosses where you use blocks that act like a hitbox. These fights were both good and Bowser's brother. But then, I made this guy. While still using Noob Boss as a base, I began to mess with the internal workings of the sprite and started to understand what was under the hood, how it all functions, all that. As it turns out, it wasn't hard for me to manipulate it. I then found that someone was creating their own bosses with a tool called Dyson Sprite Maker. Now, despite how exciting the tool sounded, it unfortunately only creates frames and detection boxes. Without any knowledge of 65CA to 16 assembly, a low programming language that has high difficulty, at best you're creating a single image on screen that does nothing else, if you figure out how to fix its output to begin with. So I used this tool to create frames, interjected them into Noob Boss, but then I went, what if? And so I began working on a silly enemy for OMH. And I made another. Eventually, around the time I made this Luigi fight, I made this custom enemy.
Beware, I live.
Soon after, I made boss fights in the realms of Brutal Mario when I made Richard Sujin, Ultima Hawkmouth, and eventually got good enough to create a couple Bowser fights. The Ultima Hawkmouth fight is when a certain streamer on Twitch took a notice of my programming abilities. That's when I got the elusive DM to make a boss based on Mario from Super Mario Bros. 3 that uses almost every power-up from that game. I was given a reference of what Papanug wanted for the boss, and I sat on it for a year wondering how the hell I was gonna pull this off. I was thinking about potentially making the boss using dynamic frames that update one part of the graphic instead of filling up all 2 pages, some of which needed to be present for global stuff. I ended up looking at the frames I was given and realized I could fit most of the graphics, so I don't need to change things out that often. The only graphics I needed to swap were related to Small Mario, which I knew were only needed for much later in the fight. Now the funny thing was, technically I was going to have a Mario boss for a personal hack, only it was based on Super Mario World itself, and it was Melon Pizza who was going to code it. I told him about the job I was going to take on, and he thought it was cool, and that it'd help for when we start that fight one day. We have yet to start that fight, but in fairness, we have other projects to worry about. Anyway, with his blessing, I found myself making my own Super Mario fight. Development started one step at a time, following closely with the instructions that was set upon me. The rule plan is this. Mario will the boss, not the... that's confusing. Okay, so the plan is that the boss is gonna randomly select a power-up from above its head, and once it lands on said power-up, it activates the attack. For Phase 1, it had a mushroom, a shell, and a fire flower. The mushroom allows for the boss to run towards Mario, then jump to do a ground pound that causes a shockwave. The shell makes the boss attack the player with a, well, take a guess. It only damages the boss if you bounce on it first. The red shell is an attack that is guaranteed every 5th power-up, where it will create a wall of fire to shell jump. Did you pick up the fact that this was Kaizo? Yes, yeah, it's a Kaizo, yep, just checking. The Fire Flower is the only attack with 2 variants. Either the boss will summon a rain of fire, or it will shoot fireballs at you. The rain of fire becomes more sporadic the more damage the boss takes. I made this attack pool system using what people call Tetris bag logic, though I refer to it as a deck of cards logic, where you have a deck, you play the entire deck before reshuffling. It makes it so the boss uses all of its attacks before any repeats. The only exception is the red shell that I mentioned earlier. For Phase 2, it adds into its attack pool by introducing the Tanuki Leaf and the Frog Suit. The moon will turn a bit red, indicating the new phase. The Tanuki Leaf borrows from the Leaf Shield from Mega Man 2, as the boss flies in the sky before descending downwards. The Frog Suit floods the stage with water, and encases the ceiling with spikes, a direct nod to Brutal Mario's Bowser boss. It will first swim left and right, before chasing you from top and below. Any hits done to this boss decreases the time for when the boss will move, so you need to know how many hits the boss has left. For Phase 3, there will be a full blood moon, as 2 more attacks are added to the pool, and 1 being removed. The Tanuki Suit is a upgraded mushroom attack, where the boss will turn into a statue and slam 3 times in quick succession. With the Tanuki Suit being a better version of the mushroom, you probably already guessed the mushroom is the one removed from the attack pool. The Hammer Suit, the one seen in the thumbnail, is probably the most consistent attack to dodge. The boss will throw its hammers in a sine wave, throwing slowly further and backwards, with just a tiny bit of RNG to slightly change the speed of the hammers being thrown. This RNG isn't necessarily made to make the fight harder, unlike some of the other attacks. It's really there to remove the ability to dodge the hammers by going under. Your best bet is to jump over the hammers. The Tanuki Leaf got one huge buff in Phase 3. Not only will it still throw leaf shields, it will continue doing so while it's descending. That is every attack in the main fight explained, but there is one more phase. When you dealt damage to the boss 9 times, the Super Mario Bros. 3 Mario is going to sustain enough hurt to finally shrink to his normal human form. This final phase plays in a loop. First, the boss will simply try to pursue you and chase you around. It is auto-timer called through RNG to decide when it will jump only when you're close enough. The best strategy is to attempt to bail the boss to jump, though if you find yourself near a wall and it still hasn't, you need to jump over. Second, while it's on the pursuit for you, it'll take out a shell and kick it towards you. The timing of when it pulls the shell out and when it kicks is always consistent, so make sure you already bait the boss to jump. Once you return to sender, the boss is over. That is unless... Third, you will eventually hear the item box drop in a power-up sound, but it's not yours, but rather, it's the boss's. It's a power-up that drops from off-screen, so you have a limited amount of time to either kill the boss or steal its power-up, because if you don't, you will be redoing the entire fight again from Phase 2. I always like to relay this fun fact, but Papa Nug originally just wanted this to be a full reset, but I argued that it's no different than just it being an insta-death attack. After the boss dies, the screen will freeze to mimic the Super Mario Bros. 3 death animation, then a door will appear in the middle. You can then proceed to exit and roll credits. While developing the boss, I gave a couple test versions to Papa Nug when it was near finished, and there was one glaring issue that both of us realized. The boss was too slow. I followed what he originally proposed very closely, so he was quick to put the blame on himself and handed me a list of stuff to change. For one thing, the mushroom attack in the early build was made to act like Small Mario originally, in which Papa Nug didn't feel it, to paraphrase, fit the dance he wanted the player to waltz with. So I redid the mushroom and the tanuki suit to be more or less based on a pattern. The bigger issue was the old roulette animation, so I ended up speeding it up to fasten the overall fight. Fun fact, the idea reminded me of the DKC bonus game, where the balloon moves to the point where it's 60 FPS. Games in the 90s were ruthless, man. The two changes allowed for the boss to more closely be that waltz Papa Nug wanted, where there is a flow you enter when you get used to how the fight works. Also, I literally didn't give a shit about optimizing my code at all. I needed to get this done before my big trip to the campsite, where I taught children how to shell jump in real life. They're, true demons, according to the Jeff. Daizo, no one's gonna get that reference! Yes, I know, shut up! Now, with all that being said, most of you didn't just enjoy the boss. You enjoyed the song that came with the boss. Now, I compose music. I can make some bangers. I did not make this banger. Papa Nug did. The song I vibed with while making the boss is the Sairumaru Super Mario Bros. Metal remix Dr. Anaz parted. I'm pronouncing it as Dr. Anaz, not Dr. Anus. Shut up. The song I had in mind is the Persona track, I'll Face Myself, because, well, he is fighting himself, obviously. In the end, I respect the decision to create the boss track, Mario Fight, which takes heavy cues from the Mortal Kombat movie theme. But yeah, I didn't have any involvement with the song. But I approve. It's a banger. I was requested to make the boss as customizable as possible, just so Papa Nug can tweak any settings he likes. And that brought in a hard mode variant of the boss where you fight against Luigi. Considering in Super Mario Bros. 3, Luigi is just a palette swap, we decided, for the sake of Papa Nug's stuffed ROM, that we don't introduce more graphics into the game, and just go with the same method. The main differences started with increasing almost every setting while still allowing it to be beaten without tools. Shells are thrown faster, Fire Rain moves down faster, Fireballs move faster, Fire Walls move faster, Leaf Shields remain identical, Hammers remain identical, Frog Suit forward dashing is increased while vertical remains identical. With only a handful of buffs, Luigi might actually rank as harder than most Super Mario World custom bosses. The fireball alone is just barely possible to dodge alone, and it's guaranteed every 5 attacks. I guess he decided that winning Mario Party by doing nothing was just him using 1% of his power, because when he does do something, there's no god that'll save you from Luigi's wrath. The strategy I see people use is to always reserve a spare shell to better prepare for the fast firewalls. What I ended up doing with Luigi was, again, the palette, but I also decided the fading for the sun. It's a lot more subtle than the moon, but there are still slight differences for each phase. Besides that, all the customizable settings were tweaked by Papa Nug. In my Super Mario World journey, if you asked me 5 years ago if I'd make a boss as complex as the Perchance final boss, I'd honestly laugh at your face. However, the butterfly effect is certainly a real concept, in that if not for me seeing the Captain K rule fight in Super Mario World, and without the one user inspiring me to give me a honest try at making custom sprites, I wouldn't have a boss that became infamously difficult, or a boss that garnered 50,000 views, with Luigi also getting just as high of a view count. The lesson of today is if you come with the phrase, "You can't just say perchance" on any of my videos, I will reply perchance to you in the way you spelt perchance. Fun fact, I still keep doing it, it's funny. If I had any tips for upcoming programmers using 65C816 assembly, here's what I'd say. Mess around with a debugger, have a friend who is also a coder, learn how to count binary like Sakurai, eat chocolate while you work if you're not diabetic, and abuse state machines like nobody's business. This is Daizu Devon, and it's never goodbye, it is always a see you later. Perchance.